Good afternoon once again, dear participants.
Thank you
Thank
all
you all
for the
for the
overwhelming
overwhelming
response to our
response
first
to our
webinar
first
on
webinar on
COVID-19
COVID-19
diagnosis and the
diagnosis
role of the
and the role of the
C-reactive protein.
C-reactive protein.
Now, Agape
Now, Agape
Diagnostics
Diagnostics
presents to you
presents to you
our
a
second
second
webinar on
webinar
the
on
topic
the topic
COVID-19
COVID-19
diagnosis and
diagnostics and
surveillance
surveillance
and
and
indigenous
indigenous
approach.
approach.
A few
A few
points to
points to
note
note
before we
before we
get into
get into
the
the
presentation.
presentations.
During the
During the
course of the
course of the
session,
session,
your
your
audio
audio
shall be
shall be
kept
kept
on a
on a
mute
mute
mode.
mode.
Any
Any
questions
questions
that you
that
may
you may
have
have
could be
could be
posted
posted
in the
in the
chat
chat
box
box
on the
on the
right
right
side of
side
your
of your
screen
screen
towards the
towards the
end
end
of the
of the
session.
session.
The
The
answers
answers
would be
would be
given
given
by
by
the
the
respective
respective
resource
resource
persons
persons
live
live
and
and
toward
toward
the
the
end
end
of the
of the
session.
session.
We
We
have
have
two
two
prominent
prominent
resource
resource
persons
persons
for
for
this
this
webinar.
webinar.
Professor
Professor
Dr. D.M.
Dr.
Vasudevan,
D.M. Vasudevan,
MBBS,
MBBS,
MD,
MD,
FAMS,
FAMS,
Farsipat.
Farsipat.
He's a
He's
technical
a technical
advisor of
advisor of
Agape
Agape
Diagnostics
Diagnostics
Limited,
Limited,
and
and
Dr.
Dr.
Kannan
Kannan
Vaidyanathan,
Vaidyanathan, Professor and Head of Molecular Biology, Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi. In the first session, Dr. Kannan Vaidyanathan will share his expert views on combating COVID-19 with RT-PCR technology. And in the second session, Dr. D.M. Vasudevan will enlighten us on the topic RT-LAM technology and Eagle's eye view. Let me take this opportunity to introduce our first research person to you, Dr. Kannan Vaidyanathan.
Dr.
Dr. Kannan Vaidyanathan completed MBBS from Medical College Kottayam in 1999 and MD in Biochemistry from Medical College Trivandrum in the year 2003. He did postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of Microbiology and Cell Biology at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore from 2003 to 2006. He is currently the head of molecular biology and professor, Department of Biochemistry at Amrita Institute of Medical Science and Research Center, Kochi, since May 2019. He has won numerous awards, including the Asia Pacific Federation of Clinical Biochemists Silver Jubilee Scholarship in Beijing, China, and KP Sinha PS Krishnan Award for Best Original Research Article in Indian Journal of Clinical Biochemistry in the year 2011. He is a life member of various associations, including American Association of Clinical Chemistry and Association of Clinical Biochemists of India. Other major positions currently held by him include being the managing editor of Indian Journal of Clinical Biochemistry and South Zone representative of Association of Clinical Biochemists of India. He is a co-author of 3 textbooks in biochemistry. He has more than 80 publications, including 25 in PubMed indexed journals. He has delivered more than 60 lectures in national. He has guided 6 PhD students and more than 50 postgraduate students. He's an examiner for MBBS, BDS, PhD, and allied health sciences for various universities in India. His areas of research include inborn errors of metabolism, clinical chemistry, and molecular biology. Hearty welcome, dear Dr. Kannan, to this webinar. Over to Dr. Kannan for the presentation.
Hello, welcome all. I understand there are delegates coming from all over the world, so I wish a good day. And thank you, Vineet, for the kind introduction, and thanks to Agape Diagnostics for giving me this opportunity to share my views with you. Now, in this presentation about the RT-PCR technology, I'll be spending the first 10 to 15 minutes to give a brief introduction about the PCR technique as such, because I understand there's a it's a very crowd over here. So basics about the PCR will be dealt with very brief. I won't go into much details. If you have any doubts, you can post to me. And after that, I will be talking about the main theme of today's topic, presentation, that's the RT-PCR technique or reverse transmission PCR in the next 15 minutes or so. And towards the end, I'll share a little bit of experience what we have about COVID-19 diagnosis at Amazon very briefly. Just give us some idea of what we have been doing. So with that introduction, so total I expect to complete the presentation in 30 to 35 minutes. So without wasting much time, let me start the topic. I'll be starting with the basics of the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR as we know. Now what exactly is PCR? Now PCR is a technique which is used for amplification of nucleic acids. Now nucleic acids means DNA or RNA, and it is almost sometimes referred to as like syroxing of DNA or RNA for that matter. Now PCR usually it starts with a short stretch of DNA which has to be amplified, and it is amplified multiple times, like a million-fold. Even if you have a single DNA to start with, it can be amplified a million-fold by the end of the reaction. And the amplified sample can be then used for various other purposes, which I'll be explaining briefly. Now, this technique was introduced in 1985 by the scientist Carey Mullis, whose picture you can see here. And the advantage of this technique is that within a few hours, and in fact within a couple of hours or so, you can amplify the DNA to such large quantities. Now, essentially, there are three steps in this process, which consists of separation, followed by an annealing step, and finally the polymerization step. The separation of the initial denaturation, the double-stranded DNA is denatured usually by the application of heat into single strands. We all know that in the case of DNA, let's start with DNA, and after that I'll talk about RNA. Double-stranded DNA is first converted into single-stranded strands of DNA. And for this, you also need short primers. And what exactly is a primer? I'll come to that shortly. Which is for DNA amplification, which is added onto the mixture. Now the process is catalyzed by the enzyme DNA polymerase, and which produces complementary new strands. And there is a copying, which is the annealing. The process is repeated for each new strand, and the three steps of separation, that is denaturation, annealing, and polymerization, are carried out usually in the same vial but at different temperatures. Now, I'll come to each of these steps a little bit more clear. The first step is a separation of denaturation. So here, usually what we have is a target sequence is taken. A target sequence can be a blood sample or some other sample which contains the DNA or the RNA. And usually it is less than 3,000 base pairs. And also it contains the mixture, which contains the DNA primers, the template DNA, the DNTPs, the tag polymer, which is the enzyme, all of them, which are in the master mix, which is contained in the PCR tube. Now, this target sequence is identified by a specific pair of primers. Now, what's the primer? It's usually an oligonucleotide. Oligonucleotide is nothing but a sequence of DNA or RNA, and it can be usually about 20 nucleotides, but can vary from 10 to 25 nucleotides. And how do you carry out the denaturation? It is, as I mentioned earlier, it is by heating. And usually it is by heating to about 95 degrees Celsius for about 30 seconds, or sometimes it can be up to 2 minutes. And this is essentially to separate the strands for the next step. And longer times will increase the denaturation but decrease the enzyme yield as well as the temperature. Now, once the strands are separated, the next step is the priming or the annealing. And this is the step where the primer actually comes into picture. Now, here the temperature is decreased usually by 15 to 25 degrees, and the primers will anneal onto the DNA strand. The single strands, the primers will anneal. Mind you, the DNA is now single-stranded DNA, and to each of these single strands, the primers, which are nothing but complementary DNA strand sequences, will go and attack. That is what is essentially annealing. And this step is also usually for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And shorter time will increase the specificity, but it may decrease the yield. So an optimum time is usually used for the annealing step as well. Now, about the PCR primers, as I mentioned, PCR primers range from 15 to 30 nucleotides. These are also single-stranded molecules and are complementary sequences. Now, each primer for the target sequence on the end of the DNA is needed. And why? Because it will allow the simultaneous copying in both the directions for both the strands. So, therefore, the two strands will have two primers. So, one what is referred to as a forward primer, and the other is a reverse primer, which will anneal onto the two separate strands of the DNA, and the copying will take place in both the strands simultaneously. And the primers are also added in excess so that they will bind the target DNA instead of two strands binding each other. Because otherwise, what happens is once the two strands are separated, and if the primers are deficient, the strands only will go and bind to each other. So to prevent that, excess of primers are added so that the preferential binding of the DNA strands are onto the primer. Now, how do you select a primer? Now, selecting a primer is one of the most important criteria which determines the efficiency of the PCR reaction. Now, the primer length, the melting temperature, the specificity, the GC content, that's the guanine cytosine content, all these are important while selecting a primer. Now, it usually depends upon the gene which is also being chosen. We'll come to some more details about this later on. Now, using the primer, there is annealing which is occurring. Annealing is nothing but the process of allowing two sequences of DNA to form the hydrogen bond. And usually it is by cooling to about 55 degrees. Now, I said usually because this depends upon, as I mentioned earlier, the primer. Now, the GC content is an important parameter which determines the annealing temperature. Now, the GC content, if it is higher, that means you all know that GC has a triple bond, whereas AT is only a double bond. So, if a DNA has more of GC content, then more temperature might be needed for annealing. So, an optimum concentration of GC and AT content again allows a proper annealing temperature of 55 to 65 degrees, which is usually sufficient for most of the PCR reaction. Now, this also requires the enzyme which is known as a Taq polymerase. Now, Taq stands for Thermus aquaticus. Now, Thermus aquaticus is a microbe which was isolated from the Yellowstone National Forest, and it produces an enzyme. It's a DNA polymerase, and it amplifies using the primers in the PCR reaction in the presence of magnesium ions. And once the annealing of the two strands is completed, then the next step is polymerization. Now, what exactly is polymerization? Annealing is nothing but just the strands will go and sit there, and then the Taq polymerase will work at a temperature of about 72 to 75 degrees Celsius when the actual hydrogen bond is formed between the strands, and that is exactly what is polymerization. Now, the DNA polymerase will recognize the primer and make a complementary copy of the template, which is now single-stranded. And usually the speed of polymerization is about 150 nucleotides per second. So like that, we can also estimate the time required for polymerization. This also usually is about the same time, 30 seconds to 2 minutes is used for the polymerization as well. So roughly speaking, these are the PCR cycles which are occurring. Now first you have the denaturation, which is for 94 to 95 degrees, the primer annealing, 55 to 65 degrees Celsius, and extension, 72 to 75 degrees Celsius. And these three cycles, step 1, 2, and 3, otherwise these are referred to as step 1, step 2, step 3 also, are repeated for multiple cycles for about 25 to 40 cycles. So that at the end of 40 cycles, what you get is a million-fold amplification of the DNA. Now, usually before the initial denaturation, that's the first cycle, there is another initial denaturation of the DNA is also used, after which the 40 cycles are carried out. Now, what are the requirements for PCR? Essentially, these are the requirements magnesium chloride, the buffer, the DNTPs, which are nothing but the cytosine, guanine, the nucleotides which are used for the PCR, the primers, the DNA polymer which is usually provided by the Taq polymerase, and of course the target DNA. Now, the initial, all of them are usually contained in the master mix, and the target DNA is present in the sample which we are adding. So these are the essential requirements. Of course, you need the PCR machine, which is otherwise known as the thermal cycle. Now, several problems can occur with Taq. Now, one of the things is that there is lack of proofreading of the newly synthesized DNA. So theoretically, there can be some errors, but usually it is very efficient. That is why Taq polymerase is used, and the errors which occur in this process are very limited. But however, there is an error which can occur in the coding, which is as a theoretical possibility. There are other enzymes like the PFU which are used, which are however less efficient but more accurate. Now, this is only a theoretical possibility. Sometimes, very rarely, you can come up with the problems of misincorporation of bases onto the new DNA strand. Now, coming to the applications of PCR. Now, PCR has, in fact, various books have been written on the applications of PCR. It's not my intention to go into all the details of the applications of PCR in detail, but briefly, they can be used for basic research as well as for the laboratory diagnosis. Now, in the basic research itself, it can be used for various things like mutation screening in cancer, drug discovery, classification of organisms, genotyping, molecular archaeology, and various other applications, unlimited applications of PCR. Now, we are more concerned about the laboratory diagnosis applications of PCR. So, this can be briefly summarized into the detection of infectious disease, which is the subject matter of our interest now. And then it can also be used for detection of variations and mutations in genes. Now, some interesting facts like detection of diseases from the past, I'll explain, and also it has forensic applications. Now, infectious diseases, in fact, are so much utilized for the for PCR. It can be used for HIV and various other sexually transmitted diseases like chlamydia, papillomavirus, and in fact, any kind of infectious disease, tuberculosis, all those things can be diagnosed using the technique of PCR. Now, like detection of variations in mutant, this is also very commonly used in medical practice. The mutations in various genes, including various kinds of genetic disorders, prenatal diagnosis of genetic disorders, etc., and various cancers, the detection of mutations has been widely used for the PCR applications. Now, in addition, can be used for detection of diseases from the past. What I mean is that if you have a sample which is stored from a person who is dead, even after his death, you can have the retrospective analysis of diseases using PCR. Some examples are given here, and of course, you all have given seen the science fiction movie Jurassic Park, where the dinosaur has been created using the PCR technique. So it definitely has studies using PCR also have an evolutionary significance. And nothing more can be said about the applications in forensic like DNA fingerprinting, where various incidents are there where convicts have been accused have been proved innocent, or even convicts have been released from prisons by the application of PCR. Now, with that brief introduction about the PCR techniques, I come to the main part of today's topic presentation, which is the reverse transcription PCR, or what is otherwise known as RT-PCR. Now, before I start, now this term RT-PCR has been very much confusingly used in the past. Now, in the past, it was also used to describe real-time PCR, which is now more commonly used, referred to as the quantitative PCR, and it is abbreviated as qPCR. In the past, Real-time PCR was also abbreviated as RT-PCR. Now it is abbreviated as qPCR. Now, RT-PCR has been widely used for the diagnosis of COVID-19, which is the most important disease, as we all know, but the world is facing in the current crisis. Now, what exactly is RT-PCR? Now, reverse transcription PCR or RT-PCR is a laboratory technique. Now, this has actually two steps. Now, first is the reverse transcription of RNA into DNA, or what is otherwise known as a complementary DNA or cDNA production. And second step is using the cDNA or the cDNA is amplified for target DNA specific DNA targets using the protein PCR, and then finally we can measure the actual amount of RNA which was present. And this is also usually done using a fluorescence mechanism. So what we have is that initially you start with an RNA. So the first step would be extraction of RNA. You have a sample from which the RNA is extracted, and from this RNA, the complementary DNA or cDNA is produced. And once we have a cDNA, from the cDNA, the target DNA, which can be let's say, for example, in this case, COVID-19, the target DNA is amplified. And finally, depending upon the extent of the target DNA which is present, we can estimate the presence of RNA in the original sample using the fluorescence technique. Now, several advantages are there for the RT-PCR, and such that it has become a benchmark technology for the detection and comparison of RNA. For example, it doesn't require a post-PCR processing, especially when you're doing the quantitative real-time PCR. There is no post-PCR processing step required. A wide range of RNA abundance can be measured. 10 raised to 7 fold RNA can be measured using this technique, and both qualitative as well as quantitative analysis can be done. So usually it is quantitative which is done because, for example, in the case of COVID-19, we need to estimate. I'll come to that later on. We need to find out exactly how many copies of the DNA or the RNA has been present in the original sample. But it can also be used for qualitative. For example, it can be just used to detect whether it is positive or negative as well. And therefore, because of the simplicity, the specificity and sensitivity, there is another importance of the RT-PCR, which is almost 100% specific and sensitive. And because of these reasons, it's used in a wide range of applications. And in this case, the COVID-19 detection. So what are the steps in COVID-19 diagnosis? The first step, the most important probably step, one of the most important steps is the sample collection process. And we'll come to details of each of these techniques in subsequent slides. And then the second step is the RNA extraction and purification. The third step is the actual PCR reaction, the RT-PCR. And finally, you have the analysis and interpretation. Now, sample collection is a very important step, as I mentioned, in the COVID-19 diagnosis. Usually, the sample is collected by a nasopharyngeal swab or an oropharyngeal swab. Now, the oropharyngeal and nasopharyngeal swab has about 99% detection. Now, what I mean is, if you take a blood or urine sample, you may pick up only 1% of the viral virus which is present in the person. This is because viremia does not occur very commonly in this disease. So therefore, you need to pick up the sample from the swab from the nasopharynx. So that's very important. And it's also important that the exact site from which the swab is taken should be taken, because sometimes what happens is when the swab is not taken properly, you may miss the actual site from which the disease, the virus may be present, and that can lead to a false negative result. So therefore, it is very important that the technical person should be trained properly in the sample collection process. And usually, trained nurses or laboratory technicians are employed for the sample collection. Or whoever should be trained properly how the sample collection is done. And the swab is inserted through the nostrils and gently moved through the nasopharynx and rotated for a specified time to obtain the specimen which contains the virus. And once the sample is obtained, it is to be transferred through a viral transport medium or a VTM. Now, this is also a very important step. The sample transport is also a very important step because suppose if it has to be transported across to another region or in another referral lab, then it has to be in the proper conditions, including temperature and all the necessary precautions need to be taken for the transport. So transport is also important for the COVID-19. And the next step is the RNA extraction and purification step. Now there are various kits which are available for RNA extraction. Now Agape has come up with this kit which is known as a MagBind RNA extraction kit. Now the essential component, the most important components of the kit are given here, and that includes the protease which is used for DNA lysis and also the magnetic nanoparticles. And of course it also contains the lysate, the wash buffers, and the mineral oil and the eluent solution. Now the kit extract briefly is used to enrich and purify the RNA in the specimen using a magnetic nanoparticle technology. So the technology which is used is a magnetic nanoparticle technology. This is an indigenous PCR technique, the PCR RNA extraction technique which Agape has come up with. The nucleic acids in the specimen, that's for example the RNA, and the magnetic nanoparticle will combine in the buffer, and then they are under the influence of the magnetic field, they complete the extraction. That's very briefly. Now, to give more details about the actual procedure, the protocol which is followed, about 10 microliter protease K is taken and to the sample is added, and it is spun for after shaking and blending, and then the lysate and the magnetic nanoparticles are added in the PCR tube, and then it is covered, and after shaking and blending for 10 seconds, it has to stand at room temperature for 10 minutes, and after that, it is placed on the magnetic separator for 3 minutes, and then the buffer is added, and again after shaking, once again kept on the magnetic separator, and then the next buffer is added, and also mineral oil is added, and then it is spun in the magnetic separator once again. We need not go into the by heart the procedure because it is given in the kit insert how the procedure is done. Now once and then after that, finally you get the RNA. Ultimately, after a short centrifugation of 30 seconds, the eluent solution is added, and at the end of the reaction you get the RNA. Now this RNA can be either used for the cDNA production in the subsequent reactions, or it can be stored at below minus 20 before the next use. Now the RT-PCR also Agape has come up with a indigenous kit. Now this is known as the Agape SARS-CoV-2 fluorescent PCR kit. Now this of course makes use of the fluorescence as the parameter for detection. Now PCR can be done for using different types of primers. In the case of Agape, they have come up with this kit which focuses on the open reading frame ORF1 AB gene and the E and N gene of the COVID virus. Now it depends upon the primer which you're using, which gene is selected. So suppose you're using these 3 genes, as in the case of the Agape kit, the primers had to be appropriately designed. Now that the kit also comes with a primer, so you can select out the exact inputs. Now, why I'll come to the importance of this selecting this particular gene later on. Now, in the case of this Agape kit, it is detected by measuring the fluorescence intensity in real time. And you also, in the kit, you also have the enzyme mix, the reaction mix as a master mix, and also the negative control and the positive control as well as the internal control. The effective use of all these controls will make sure that false negative results are eliminated. Now, this is how briefly the procedure is done. You initially produce the master mix, which contains 3 microliter of the enzyme mix and 17 microliter of the reaction mix. So that's 20 microliter, which is added onto the PCR well, and then 20 microliter of the RNA template, which is also produced in the earlier step, is also added to make a total mix of 40 microliter. Now, how many samples can be used? It depends upon the expertise of the technician. So if the technician is and also the number of samples the lab is receiving. So you can do, theoretically you can do up to 96 samples. So depending upon the requirement, usually about 20 or 25 or 50, or depending upon the sample load, you can use the number of reactions at the same time. Now this diagram shows, it's a diagrammatic representation of the target genes for the COVID diagnosis. So as you can see here, there are two open reading frames in the beginning, that's ORF1A and ORF1AB. The ORF1AB is used, and then you also use the E and N genes in the case of the agape. And because of those, the primers are also selected appropriately. Now, these are the recommended thermal cycling protocols for the kit. As I mentioned in the beginning, the reverse transcription is done at 55 degrees for 15 minutes, and then you have the 3 cycles consisting of the denaturation for 95 seconds, annealing and extension, which is done at 58 degrees for 35 seconds. These are repeated for 40 cycles, and in this case, you at the end of the 40 cycles, you also cool the instrument to 40 degrees for about 10 seconds. Now, sometimes you may have to alter the protocol. Usually it is not needed, but suppose the primers are getting old or some other problem, sometimes you may have to alter the protocol a little bit. That depends upon the expertise of the technician, and the troubleshooting instructions are also given along with the kit. Usually this conditions will work for the PCR run. Now, coming to the result interpretation, the result interpretation is also important. As I mentioned earlier, you can either do it qualitatively or quantitatively. In this case, it is done quantitatively for the COVID-19, and it's actually an inverse relation. The cycle threshold is inversely correlated with the fluorescent signal. It's inversely correlated to the target DNA, target RNA which is present in the sample. Now, if it is more than 38 for the ORF1AB and the N gene, it is considered to be negative, and more than 37 for the E gene is considered to be negative. So more or less 37 to 38 is the cutoff limit for the cycle threshold or the CT value. Now, if it is less than or equal to 38 for the initial the ORF1AB and the N gene, it is considered to be positive, and less than 30 equal to 37 for the E gene is considered to be positive. Now, one of the importance of using these 3 genes is that it is very helpful to eliminate false negative results. Now, obviously, if the 3 genes are positive, it is COVID-19 positive. And also, if the ORF1AB and either the N or the E genes are positive, it is also considered to be positive. But if only the ORF1AB gene is positive, you have to repeat the test. And if it is still positive, it is interpreted as COVID positive. But if it is negative and either of the other genes is considered to be positive, it has to be again repeated. And if it is considered to be, if any of the genes come positive, it will be interpreted as COVID positive. Otherwise, it will be a suspect who needs to be retested. And if all the 3 genes are negative, then it is considered to be COVID-19 negative. That's regarding the interpretation of the result. So the advantage of having these 3 genes again is that false negative results are eliminated. Now, this is once again to summarize, the MagBind RNA extraction kit from Agape, which uses a magnetic bead technology. It is easy to perform, and it can also be used for both manual and automated RNA extraction kits. It has a good yield and can be used for various types of technologies. And the fluorescent PCR kit, which I mentioned earlier, also it's based on a multiplex technology, and the use of the 3 genes eliminates false negative, and it's also an open system in the sense that it can be used in any PCR machine. It's also FDA approved. So that's about the technique, RT-PCR. And coming to the Amrita experience, now we have started the COVID-19 detection in Amrita recently after the pandemic has started. And we have done about a few samples. About 100 samples have been done. Obviously, the results cannot be revealed outside because it is confidential. And it's a tedious work because we had to go through a lot of things, including getting the accreditation and also the process. You know that the government samples. If we are doing the government samples, we had to report it within 24 hours. We are actually licensed to do samples from both the government as well as private, being a private institution. So we do the samples. And this is the team which has been doing the work. We have been working almost like round the clock for the last 1 month or so. Like even on Sundays, we start the work at 7 a.m. and the work goes on till 2 a.m. in the next day morning. That has been the kind of work. And even the accreditation, which was extended on to the midnight. So there is nothing like a time scale for the kind of work which we are doing because the results are important and the patients had to benefit from the results. So we all have that thing in mind. So I'd like to thank all the management, the supporting staff from the Amrita Molecular Biology Lab, and also especially the HODs of Microbiology and Biochemistry departments who have worked along with us tirelessly along to bring this our lab to this level. And lots of people have also collaborated who are not mentioned in this acknowledgement slide. For example, the I mean, it's almost like a universal phenomenon that Dr. Vasudevan is involved in any of my work. So Dr. Vasudevan, I specifically didn't put it because he's always there for all the work. And also the government of Kerala, the Sri Chitra Institute of Medical Science, NABL, ICMR all have worked tirelessly so that we could get the accreditation because they have now the process. If your lab is accredited, they can get us the accreditation in something like a very short span of time, like within a couple of days if we are ready. So all of them have worked tirelessly with us, and they have helped us to get our lab accredited and we have started the process. So I think the questions will be asked after the next session. I'll be happy to answer any questions which you may have. So thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr. Kannan, for the very insightful presentation. Now, let me introduce the second resource person, Dr. D.M. Vasudevan, to you. Dr. D.M. Vasudevan was the principal of Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi, for 6 years, before which he was the Dean of Medical College at Gangtok, Sikkim. He holds an MD in biochemistry from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, post which he did postdoctoral research at Swiss Cancer Research Institute in Switzerland. He is a fellow of Royal College of Pathologists from London. He received the prestigious B.C. Roy Award for Eminent Medical Teacher from the hands of the then President of India, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma. He is a fellow of National Academy of Medical Sciences. He was president of the Association of Clinical Biochemists of India during the year 2010. Professor Dr. Vasudevan has 50 years of teaching and research experience in various medical colleges. He had worked in medical colleges of Calicut, Trivandrum, Kottayam, Trichur, Mangalore, Manipal, Gangtok, and Kochi. He is the author of Textbook of Biochemistry for Medical Students, now in its 9th edition, widely used in all medical colleges in India and abroad. More than 5 lakh copies of the book have been sold. The Spanish and Russian editions of the book has recently been published, and he's also the author of another 4 textbooks in biochemistry. He has published more than 240 papers in national and international journals. Some of them were cited in standard textbooks. Further, he has presented more than 200 papers in national and international conferences in and outside India. He has already guided 35 PhD students. It's a pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Vasudevan to this webinar. We shall now commence the session by Dr. Vasudevan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for a nice introduction. Dr. Kannan has already gave a very RNA into DNA, and therefore ultimately we have a hybrid of RNA and DNA. Later on, that RNA part will be lysed, and single-stranded DNA will become double-stranded DNA, and then that DNA, virally produced double-stranded DNA, is entering into the nucleus. In the lower side, you can see a circle, that is the nucleus of the cell. There, the host cell DNA, the host cell will convert that viral DNA into mRNA, then mRNA from the certain proteins are also synthesized, and this virus, the RNA and proteins will be accumulated and become new particles. That is going on. This is only a simple, quick reference on the DNA, which is the basis of our today's topic, that it is a double-stranded DNA, two strands are there. This is the building block of DNA, that the same, the backbone, on the right-hand side and left-hand side, you can see that it is the ribose and the phosphate backbones are there. And then jumping inside will be the nucleic acids, the cytosine, guanine, adenine, thymine, etc. And this particular slide I want to describe because that the new DNA is synthesized on the basis of an old DNA strand. The new strand, when it is synthesized, that it will be based on the pairing rule is what is there. That is, if there is the C, that is cytosine on the left hand side, the new strand will have a G, that is guanine. If there is thymine in the left hand side, there will be adenine on the right hand side. That is what we call as the base pairing rule, and that is kept always. That is, we will be coming across to that. And this is only that suppose in the DNA in the cell that it is wanted to divide, you can see that one portion is separated and the new strands are synthesized over the old strands. And this is what already has been taken out, that is the PCR, that the PCR, the cycle 1, that there will be 4 strands are produced, as Anand has already told. Then in the next cycle, that 4 strand becomes 8, then that becomes 16, like that it goes on. Therefore, within a short time, within about 30 cycles, that there will be millions and millions of copies which is produced. But this is the basic concept of PCR, which Dr. Anand has already told. This is only to show the difficulty here. That is, the original DNA is there on the left-hand side. That has to be separated. That is called denaturation or melting of the DNA. That is taking place at 95 degrees centigrade. And in the step 2, you can see that DNA primer is added. What is primer is also described elaborately in the previous class, and therefore the DNA primer is there. The primer will be annealed, that is, it is touching on the old strands, and then the polymerase, the DNA polymerase enzyme will work over that on that primer, and the new strand is synthesized. That is the step 1, 2, 3 will combine together one cycle. And then the step 3 goes to the step 1 in the next cycle. Therefore, 2 strands here become 4, 4 then 8, 8 becomes like that. And this is the quantification of PCR, which has already been told, that you can see the upper side that therefore 100 nanogram of the original substance. Let us say viral RNA, it is there. And then that is replicated here and many times. The second line contains 10 nanogram. And therefore, it is something like a quantitation. Whatever you are putting initially, that will give a line like that. And therefore, an unknown quantity substance is there, that is in your test sample. That is also similarly tested, and you will get a new curve. That curve will give you what exactly was the original substance or DNA, whatever it may be. And therefore, that is the way we will quantitate. This is the quantitative PCR. Of course, it is costly. The quantitation that instrument itself is very costly. Now we go to the LAMP technology. What is RT-LAMP? RT stands for reverse transcription, which has been described previously in very great detail. The LAMP means that loop-mediated isothermal amplification. Why it is called isothermal? Because the same temperature is kept. Whereas in the PCR, you will know that there were 3 cycles, three temperatures, 95 degree, then 55 degree, and then 75 degree. These 3 temperatures are kept. Whereas here, it is only one temperature, usually about 65 degree, and that is why it is called isothermal amplification. Why it is loop mediated? Because there is a loop is produced during the mechanism about which I shall describe in greater detail. The LAMP reaction proceeds at a constant temperature, whereas the PCR, the ordinary PCR method, that there will be 3 cycles. Now, the difference between the PCR, it has been time that is about 30 years back, it has been already established now, very well established. Whereas the LAMP technology has now come into being only for the last 5 years or so, and therefore that is comparatively new technology. There were certain teething troubles are there, but still the advantages I shall tell you. The reverse transcription loop mediated isothermal amplification is a technique of the amplification of the RNA. Therefore, the first we have to amplify that RNA. That RNA has to be converted to DNA. That process also has been taken elaborately by Dr. Kannan. That is the LAMP, the RNA is converted to DNA by the reverse transcriptase enzyme. And in the LAMP reaction, I am going for the LAMP reaction as such. The RT part has already been taken, therefore I am not going in greater detail. The LAMP reaction, I am going in greater detail now, and that is 4 different primers are necessary here. Whereas in the previous one, that is in the ordinary PCR, you need only 2 primers, whereas here 4 different primers are required. These are labeled as forward inner primer, forward outer primer, backward inner primer, and backward outer primer. You need not bother very much about this nomenclature. I shall come to that in a schematic representation now. See, this is the upper part. You can see 2 lines that depicts the DNA. DNA is double strand, and therefore that remains there. Now that has to be separated into a single strand. That is usually done by the polymerase itself. That particular enzyme will have the strand displacement activity here, and therefore there is no necessity for the initial separation by the 95 degrees centigrade. That separation is not required in this technique. And now in the lower side, you can see one single strand of the DNA. That single strand DNA, you are now adding a primer. This primer is called forward inner primer. You can see FIP, and that is having that F2 region. That same F2 region is also there in the DNA. Therefore, they will come together. That is called annealing, and that will come together. And thereafterwards, the DNA polymerase enzyme will active, and that DNA polymerase will add newer and newer nucleotides, and therefore there will be the synthesis of the new strand is complete. And that is what is happening after the DNA polymerase enzyme activity. You can see that the original strand is also there, over which a new strand is produced. In the next step, we add one more primer. This is called the F3 primer. This is called the external primer. Why it is called external? Because this is, you can, in the map you can see the F2 and F3. F3 is towards the left hand side of the F2. That means that is the outer region in the gene, and that is why it is called external primer. And that F3 primer is added. That F3 will now come into contact with the F3 region of the gene of the original DNA strand, and therefore from that onwards the new synthesis is taking place. You can see that the F3 is already attached there, over which the DNA polymerase enzyme will work on, and then the new strand is completed. Therefore, now DNA, double-stranded DNA of that is produced. This is the fourth step. Next step, the fifth step, what is happening in the the F3, that gene that has been a newly synthesized string is there, and therefore the original strand has been now separated out. That is what is happening. That you can see here, and that is the displaced strand forms a loop at the end. You can see in the lower picture that why it is that loop is formed, because there is in the F1 region in the both sides. Therefore, that can internally make a loop, and that is why the loop is there, and that is why the whole technique is called the loop mediated reaction. And then in the next step, from the right hand side, you add the same thing. That here you add, see the B2, that is the primer is added, the B2 primer is added, that will work on towards the left hand side. That is why it is called the backward reaction is taking place, new synthesis of DNA is taking place. Then after that you add B3 primer, that is outer gene is there, that is added there, and therefore that will displace the previously produced strand. Now that is happening in this step 7, that is the two DNA strands are produced fully. Next, that is the step 8, where you can see that one primer that is separated from that two strands, that is now become two loops. You can see on the left hand side as well as on the right hand side, loops are produced. And the structure, this is something like a dumbbell shaped structure is produced. And here you can see that this is the loop that is produced. From here onwards, it is the duplication of what has happened here. Next. You can see that the left hand side area, you can see that that loop structure is becoming that two lines, now becoming 4 lines. And in the right hand side also you can see that that 4 lines that become 8. And in the next step, that 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, 32 to 64, like that. It goes here also. And that is the step number 8 to 11 is the cyclic amplification step. The 8, you can see that the one loop is there. And then the step 9, you can see that it has become, it is duplicating into 4. It is actually 4 lines. The 4th line is coming up. The next step, that is the 9 to 10, you can see that the four lines are completed. And the 11 also, it is single line is now there, 11, and that becomes 4 lines now. And similarly, that it is going on. This is the 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 6, like 4 becomes 8, like that. You can see so many replications. The same thing is shown here. See, in the initial cycling reaction, the amplification, that loop is there in the upper part, and then that becomes 4 lines, and then the lower part, you can see that becomes so many. It becomes many times that it is duplicated. This was a video which I thought that it can be made, but it's not working. Anyway, sorry for that. Then the lamp ultimately detection. Detection can be of many types. That initially any PCR technique, the same type of detection is possible here also. The lamp assay reaction takes place in a single tube. The tube is incubated in, and then that there will be yellow green color substance is that is cyber gene, and that will give that fluorescence. That is the easiest way of the detection. But other types of detections are also possible. The PCR quantitative detection is also possible. Now, the advantages of this isothermal reaction on the PCR technique. Here, the amplification is taking as isothermal, I had already told, and the required temperature is so low that the reaction can be completed using a simple hot water bath. Whereas the PCR, you need a separate thermal cycler, and that gives the 3 different temperatures. Here, that is not required. This is quick, one step, user-friendly, and then rapid. Rapid means the PCR technique as such will take about 2 hours, whereas here this will take only 10 minutes. Of course, if you take the whole reaction, all the reactions, the PCR will take about 4 to 5 hours, whereas this lamp technique will take only maybe less than 1 hour. Therefore, that is the advantage here. Then there is no need for expensive thermocycling equipment that is necessary for the PCR. And 6, that lamp assay takes less time. This is a quick reference here. The PCR requires thermal cycler, whereas lamp that is not required. PCR 2 primers, lamp it is 6 primers. That is perhaps the primer, producing the primers are sometimes difficult in the lamp technique. That is the crux of the problem. And then PCR takes much time, whereas lamp is only 20 minutes. PCR yield is comparatively low, lamp the yield is very high, and for quick reaction you can easily detect it. And PCR positive detector is required, whereas lamp is a silver detector. And lamp is also used for rapid diagnosis of viral, bacterial, parasitic, genetically modified ingredients, tumor detection, etc., etc. Where all the PCR technique that is used, all those techniques all those users can be here. Applications are for that. Therefore, lamp is a very useful technique, very rapid technique. And this is the summary of that. First, they have to take the RNA is to be extracted, and then reverse transcriptase, that is the cDNA is produced, and then the lamp technology is done. And in this particular case, the virus, the N gene is detected in this particular case, and then 2 areas of that gene, 2 targets are produced, are amplified, and then that is the dye is added that will give a fluorescence, and a small instrument is produced now. That is this particular technique has been materialized by the Sri Tarathegala Institute, and it is transferred to Agape Diagnostics. Agape is now making it into the market. That will take within another 2 weeks. That will come into market. Of course, you will here also you will get a positive, negative, or inconclusive results. That here this particular case that intended to take, as I told, there are 2 regions of the one A and B regions of the COVID virus. The positive result indicates the presence of the particular virus RNA. Negative results do not preclude the virus infection and should not be used as the sole basis of treatment of other patient management decisions. Negative results must be combined with clinical observations, patient history, etc. And inadequate or inappropriate specimen collection, storage, and transport may lead to false test results. Next. The specimen, how the swab is to be taken, etc., that has already been done, and therefore I am not going into detail now. Next. The specimen, this part I think is very important. Specimen taking, and then that has to be packaged and shipped and transported according to the regulations. And then specimens can be stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade for 72 hours. If you need more time to be taken, then that has to take up at -70. And the Sri Tarathegala Center has come up with a kit, and this kit has these 3 components. That is the Agape Chitra General LAMP RNA extraction kit. That extraction kit, that RNA is isolated. Then the RT kit, that is the RNA has to be converted to cDNA, and that is kit is the. And then the third step is that the LAMP technique, the LAMP assay, that it is done. And therefore these are very useful, very simple test kits are now produced. Now, if you remember the LAMP test for the COVID virus or this SARS virus 2, that is not available easily in India. Of course, abroad it is there, but here Sri Tarathegala Center has come up with this particular test kit, and that will be very useful, very easy to do. Next. And the test procedure phase 1, that RNA extraction of the viral sample. This is how the details have already been done, and therefore I am not taking. In the next phase, the cDNA is synthesized, and that is also very simple. It is only few minutes are only required for that particular reaction. And the phase 3, that two areas of the N gene of the virus is identified, and the LAMP enzyme, and then that the dye, both are mixed together and kept for 10 minutes. The actual reaction is only 10 minutes, but of course the preparation will take another half an hour or something like that. And then keep for 28 degrees centigrade for 2 minutes, and then read. The reading is usually a very simple procedure, that is only a fluorescence technique, and therefore it is simple machine is there. And then reading is the fluorescence reading is there. The combination of the reagents and specifically calibrated equipment can differentiate the non-temperate control and positive control significantly. Therefore, the cutoff value in this particular instrument, Chitra Agape instrument, is kept as 360 is considered positive, 340 is considered negative. And in between this value, if you get 340 to 360, such a value is got, then that is inconclusive. Inconclusive also does not mean that the patient is negative, because that can be a false negative, and therefore that has to be either repeated or is to be a new sample has to be. Thank you very much. This will be over.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Vasudevan.
Dr. Vasudevan, for the very detailed presentation.
Now we are open to questions.
Now we are open to questions. We have already received a few questions.
The first question,
The first question,
Dr. Kannan.
Dr. Kannan,
Our
our
lab
lab has an
machine.
RT-PCR machine.
We are interested.
We are interested to do COVID-19,
but we didn't get.
but we didn't get accreditation yet.
Shall we apply?
Shall we apply to SCMR now?
ICMR has
ICMR has plans to liberate that rules.
Well, it's not enough that you can do RT-PCR for COVID. Of course, you can do the other diagnosis because you know that it's a pandemic, and the reason why ICMR has these rules is that the government needs to know the details of the positive and negative samples. In fact, I don't know whether I mentioned, because each sample, within 24 hours of receiving the sample, we had to give the report. Suppose we receive the sample at 12 o'clock in the night, the next day within 12 o'clock in the night, we had to report the sample. So the government is keen to know the statistics behind the test. So that is why ICMR has taken such a strict control. So I don't think it is possible anywhere that we can liberate the rules. Of course, you can apply to NABL. If your lab is accredited for molecular biology, you can apply to NABL. NABL will guide you and regarding how to go about the accreditation. It can happen very fast. You can get it within something like a week's time maximum. If you don't have any major injuries, you can get it in a very short span of time, and you can start doing the test. But without accreditation, currently it is not feasible. I don't think it would be wise to expect that such a rule should come in the future as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kannan. We have one more question for you. It's from Dr. Amrita Singh.
Are you doing pooled sample testing for RT-PCR in your institute? When do you recommend doing pooled sample testing?
Okay, now pooled sample is usually done for community screening in low risk areas, because when you have like large number of samples which cannot be handled using individual analysis, suppose you have hundreds of samples from a low risk area, then you can do pooled sample. Usually for COVID-19, the practice is I think about 5 samples are pooled to give the result. We are not doing, because we are not doing a community screening as such as of now, because Kerala as of now the situation seems to be a control. But suppose we have an outbreak, like a second outbreak or something like that, and the possibility of community more of community outbreak, something like that, then probably that context, that also in a low risk area, not from hotspots. From hotspots, I don't think pool screening is recommended, and only from low risk areas. For community screening, you do the pool. We are not doing it currently.
The third question is to Dr. Vasudevan. How many samples can run in lab?
That depends on that particular machine. In the Surajitra Center, they have required that RNA extraction at one particular point. You can extract RNA from 20 samples together, and therefore it is very quick in that way. Yes.
There's one more question.
Besides incorrect sampling technique, what are the other reasons for false negative in RT-PCR?
This question
is to Dr. Kannan. I'll repeat the question again. Besides incorrect sampling technique, what are the other reasons for false negative in RT-PCR?
Now, RT-PCR generally has considered to be one of the most sensitive tests, 100% sensitivity and sensitivity, you can say. Now, one of the reasons is, of course, transportations. Usually, it is a sample which is not taken properly. Because if you get the proper sample, then it is almost, not almost, you can say that 100%, if an RNA, even if a single RNA, if a single virus is present, you will detect it. So I don't think there's a methodological reason, there is a technical reason for it. During RT-PCR, you don't expect any problems. But if it is due to something like a reaction failure or some other, which can be easily done, which can be, can do the troubleshooting. But otherwise, it's the PCR as such will not give a false result. If that's what you need from the question. PCR is a very sensitive, 100% sensitive instrument.
All right.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you all for the questions.
We take this opportunity to thank Dr. Vasudevan and Dr. Kannan for their very valuable insights. Thank you all for the very active participation in the webinar. Wish you a great evening ahead. Thank you once again from the Agape team.